Hello and welcome to the Flag to Flag Motorsport Podcast. My name is Charlie Roscoe and I'm joined as always by my co-hosts Ryan and Willie. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening.
How are you?
Well, we did have three forms of motorsport to talk about this week. Of course, there was the Formula One from the Red Bull Ring in Austria, the V8 Supercars from Townsville, and we also had the World's Superbikes from the lovely Laguna Seca. A bit of a fan of that track myself, but look, let's start with the Formula One, and I have a question for you to start proceedings, gents. Did Valtteri Bottas jump the start?
No. Depends how you look at it.
I found it interesting. Like, there's been a lot of stuff on social media this week since the race, showing footage and vision of him jumping the start, and that is frame by frame, where you can see the red light go out and he's already moving. But the thing with that is, I wouldn't trust TV data and how they've synchronised it themselves. I would be trusting the FIA. Like, it's people are really getting carried away with this. As far as I'm concerned, they've got the data, but I don't know if you guys are sort of all across this, but there is a ruling where you can't anticipate the start. So if you're deemed to have
See, my problem with that is I don't understand why you can't anticipate the start. Because
I agree.
If you anticipate the start and you get it wrong, you get a penalty.
Correct.
If you get it right, you get a great start. So that's your risk. Like, if you get it wrong, then you're screwed. Like, that's your race basically done.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I think he got the perfect start, whether he anticipated it or not, which he would have had to have, because there's no way.
There's no doubt it was arse. Yeah, it was pure arse.
Yeah. But no, good on him.
Yeah, I know that the rules in place, and I know F1 are traditional with their rules. Well, they like to keep the tradition of things going, and they don't like to change rules, but this whole, if you're deemed to have anticipated the start, that you can be penalised anyway, that's ridiculous. As far as I'm concerned, if they've got data and telemetry that shows he did not move until those red lights went out, which they had, then good on him. He got it right. Yep. You know, with those anticipated, I don't know if you have ever gone to the drags yourself and tried to anticipate the start line. There is actually more of a... you can actually do it at the drags, mind you, to point out. There is always... I think there's 0.4 between each light, so you can anticipate, but I'm getting sidetracked here. The point is, if you've ever tried to anticipate something, you'll probably find half the time, 60% of the time, you'll get it wrong. You'll go a bit early or something like that, so that's why you need to wait. That's why the lights going out is randomised, so you can't anticipate it. He did. He asked it, no doubt about it. I don't care what anyone says. And Bottas knows that because he laughed the whole time. That every time he's asked about it, he just laughs. But good on him. As far as I'm concerned, he didn't break a rules. Like, he didn't jump the start because he wasn't moving before the red lights went out. Play on, I say. But anyway, he did go on to win, and I guess that's the important thing. A penalty probably would have cost him that because, of course, Vettel only finished 0.6 of a second behind him, was closing him down towards the end. Interesting to see...
No thanks to Raikkonen.
No, that's that's true. Raikkonen did still finish a solid fifth, but it was interesting to see the amount of blistering that was going on the tyres.
Yeah, everybody was complaining about that.
So it's the first time we've really seen the chink in the armour of the tyres because they've been bulletproof all year. And when we went there, everyone was talking about a one-stop strategy, literally doing half the race on ultra softs. And, well, it was a one-stop strategy for most of them. But, it was sort of the first time, I guess, we've seen these tyres which have been way too hard compound. And we've spoken about that before, that the compound of the tyres is too hard this year. They need to wear faster.
Well, definitely. And if there's talk of doing a 71-lap race on a one-stop strategy using an ultra-soft tyre...
Yeah, ultra-soft and a super-soft tyre. They're the two tyres they've used in a one-stop strategy.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Ultra-soft should only have like a 5 or a 6-lap span at peak performance.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
Not something to
I think I saw someone did 42 laps on an ultra soft tyre.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That shouldn't be able to happen. That is something I hope that they do address. And obviously Pirelli have submitted the tyres, the compounds for the year, so it looks like that's not the sort of thing that can change this year. But hopefully for next year they make them softer. As we've discussed before, there needs to be it's just ridiculous being able to do full races on a single stop strategy between the two softest compounds you can bolt on your car. So
I don't think we're going to see a hard this year, are we?
I was going to say, have we seen a hard tyre yet this year?
Good question. Good question. Off the top of my head, they're the orange banded, aren't they? Have we seen an orange tyre?
I think it's white even, maybe. I'm not sure.
But
either way.
Over the white. Yeah, but nonetheless, we haven't seen a lot of them. And if we have, it's probably been in P1, where, of course, they just whack on whatever they got. But anyway, we won't get locked into this tyre debate again, but by all means, I think it needs to change. We all agree that they're too hard compound, but at least we did see some blistering in it, so they... to start with, I was actually quite excited. I thought they might actually have to stop here for a different compound tyre. They didn't, unfortunately. The blisters...
just keep going.
Yeah, it gave them a bit of understeer, spiced it up a little bit, but didn't cause any tyre failures or anything like that. So, nonetheless, it probably... it kept the championship alive. Obviously, Hamilton having to start with a 5 grid spot penalty. Probably wasn't as...
exciting?
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. It probably didn't affect him as... Well, it probably affected him more than I anticipated. I honestly thought he'd smash through the pack and make his way onto the podium comfortably. I called it before the race and said he'd come third, as long as Bottas and Vettel kept it together. He came fourth, of course, and he didn't come fourth by a real lot, and wasn't Danny Rick stoked about that. His reaction was fantastic.
Yeah.
Cheering, carrying on, all the rest, and he treated it like a win pretty much, but... No, nonetheless, Hamilton was back up to fourth.
The biggest story to come from the race would have to be Verstappen out again.
Yeah, God, isn't he having a good run? What's that? 5 out of 7 starts, I think it was. So,
yeah, he can't catch a break at the moment.
He's not having a good run, old Verstappen. And speaking,
at least this one wasn't his fault or the car's fault. But having said that, though, there was talk that there was issues and that they probably couldn't have lasted that much longer anyway after that start.
Yeah, well, they weren't. They seemed less disappointed with what happened, the actual incident, and sort of we're talking about the clutch having failed anyway. So it sounds like they weren't going to make the race. So whilst his retirement was due to an accident, it sounds like he was going to be retiring anyway. So he's having a bad run. Maybe he's the new Mark Webber of Formula One. Webber obviously had a shocking run through the Red Bull team. Maybe that's where Verstappen sits. Yeah. It's nice to see from an Australian perspective.
I was going to say, now that the other person in that car is the Aussie getting the good luck, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's kind of balancing all out, isn't it? Especially because Verstappen is everyone's favourite superstar, and he's getting all the bad luck. So, not a great thing for him. He's going to want to start getting some points here very soon, or he's going to look a bit silly because unfortunately history doesn't recall how many DNS or car failures and all the rest. So just record how many points he's got at the end of the year. So something he'll be pretty keen to turn around. That was...
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, and it's hurting their team's championship as well, because it always seems like Verstappen's got pretty good pace, or he fights very hard at the start of the race, but of course we don't know how that pans out in a race, because he hasn't really, like you said, he hasn't finished many.
Yeah, and you're right, like obviously the Pink Panthers are snapping at the heel, Force India, and another solid result from them in 7th and 8th. Obviously they'd missed out on that opportunity at Baku that we discussed last time around, but 7th and 8th isn't too bad. I'm surprised they did finish behind Grosjean though. That's actually a pretty good result by the Haas, and his teammate would have gone even better had he not have had a failure, of course.
And with Kvyat as well, at the start of the race, he's not looking really that great at the moment. Like, people aren't thinking a lot of him.
Well, look, he hasn't had the worst season ever. I think it'd be a little harsh to judge him based solely on that race. His season's been going along okay. Pretty clearly is not at the level of Carlos Sainz, who again had an engine failure, so not having the best run, and that compounded the whole, him obviously announcing that he was looking elsewhere, and then Red Bull very quickly shutting that down, saying he will be in a Toro Rosso next year. So how about that? I'd imagine that if he can stick it out and show a bit of patience, that once Verstappen moves on, which I think is inevitable, that Verstappen's going to move on if Red Bull can't give him a winning car. I mean, his father, Jos Verstappen, is not the kind of guy to muck around. He's got the contacts. I think he'll be already spruiking his son up and down the lane trying to find the next best drive.
Probably end up at Ferrari, maybe.
Well, the Ferrari boss has been pretty critical on Kimi Räikkönen this week, saying that he needs to essentially pull his finger out and start getting some better results, achieving some better results. So that doesn't sound great in terms of renewing the contract there.
Not to mention that they've also put any rumours of Alonso going to Ferrari to bed, which is to be expected. I don't think that I would have ever expected Alonso to be up there.
No, and look, the reality is I don't think Alonso's all that attractive to people at the moment.
No.
Ferrari don't want him, and that doesn't surprise me at all. I don't think Mercedes would have him. I really don't think they would have him. Certainly not alongside Hamilton. If Hamilton left, maybe they'd put him in there as a sort of replacement to get results. But I think, unfortunately, as much as Alonso jumps up and down and he's understandably looking to move out of the McLaren, I don't know that he's going to find the greatest home to go to. He certainly won't go to a Red Bull. Red Bull seem like they're pretty strict on bringing their own guys right up through the ranks, and that's why I think if Sainz can stick it out until Verstappen leaves, that he will end up in that factory drive. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting manoeuvres in and out of the team to sort of follow on and see where it's going to go. But unfortunately, as is typical sometimes in Formula One, the off-track scenarios are sometimes more interesting than the on-track stuff. And, yeah, that was the...
Yeah. Well, did I hear about, was it Vettel saying that if he wanted to re-sign, it was up to him? Did I hear Ferrari say that?
Yeah, that could be that could potentially be a thing. So I'm not 100% sure what his contract is about, but
he'll stay there. There's nowhere else to go. Actually, what would be nice to see if he went to Mercedes.
Yeah, it does open a Ferrari. So I mean, I think Ferrari.
And him and Hamilton, that'd be great teammates. I reckon that'd be just grand.
Just can't see Mercedes combining anyone who's going to threaten that win. Because that was the problem they had with Rosberg. Rosberg and Hamilton at each other all the time. Trying to get the win. I think Bottas is a good fit for the team because he just slides in there. He doesn't argue. I think the team has put him in that number 2 position, and I think he should have a successful number 2 career, much like Barrichello and Felipe Massa and all those sorts of people that have just been the support act in the other car, and I think that's where Bottas fits in. People like Alonso, Vettel, they're not going to play in the sandpit very well with Hamilton, I don't think, or Hamilton won't play well with them, so yeah.
Well, maybe Hamilton just needs to leave and then Vettel can take that spot.
Yeah.
I think Vettel being a German would suit very well to the German brand, and there'd be a bit of harmony there, and I'm sure that Vettel will come in and do very well within the team.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think they'd have him as well.
Yeah, and the only problem there, though, is I think there might be a couple of people devastated about the fact that Hamilton would be out of a drive.
Yeah, he'd probably have to end up
I wouldn't be one of them.
I wouldn't either, but... on that pleasant note, we might make the switch across to the V8 supercars from Townsville. Or they're not V8 supercars, they're just the supercars. It's old habit dying hard.
Before you hit Townsville, I guess the main thing, reverting back to this tyre issue, but for supercars, one of the interesting things I've been pondering for the last week and so has been the news that we're obviously going back to the 2016 tyre for the Pukekohe round and Bathurst.
And Bathurst, yeah, I did say that as well. So, yeah, we were talking obviously in Formula 1 about Pirelli changing compounds. Well, supercars have done it on the fly, on the run, mid-season. They've made that decision.
Yeah,
I think it's just the other tyres, from what they've shown, would just be obviously Pukekohe. The deg must be a lot higher.
Oh, it is, definitely.
For them to make that change. But somewhere like Bathurst, if there are tyres just sort of randomly blowing out and things like that,
you don't need that to be happening.
No, but at the same time, it's going to be interesting to see because the tyres give the cars different characteristics. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams cope with the change.
Well, exactly. Are you going to look at the DJR Falcons dropping back a peg?
Yeah, I was about to say that, and Triple Eight jumping back up on top again.
But I also think what else would happen would be that you would see PRA move up a step. Not necessarily to challenge Triple Eight, but I think that they would gain as a team on the older tyre because I think that that's sort of hurt them this year.
Yeah, they haven't. Although they were hurting a little bit last year, but this year hasn't been amazing. Like they've had better results. This recent round was a street circuit, so they're different to your traditional racetracks as far as a tyre performs and the way the cars go and all those sorts of things. They are getting better, but they haven't been a powerhouse or anything like that. They've
not the team that they should be.
No, No, well, they're only a factory outfit not that long ago, and then they lost the support, and then they dominated that first season out of the factory's shadow or wake or however you want to put it. And then since then, they've just slowly sort of made their way further and further back in the pack.
Yep. Really seems a bit out of the blue that season now, looking back, doesn't it? You kind of think, how were they so dominant for the whole year? And then they've kind of gone, they lost the factory contract, as you say. The next year they just dominated, and then they were nothing again.
Yeah, well, I guess it all comes down to the, different teams progressing at different rates, and they must have just hit that stride at the right time. And unfortunately for other teams, they just weren't on it as much as they were for that year. It does happen, and you see things like Penske this year. They've been absolutely on fire. Fabian Coulthard earlier in the year, and I think we alluded to it early in the season that Coulthard was showing Scotty how it was done. But I tipped very early that was mainly just because Scotty's moving over to a new car, new team, new driver, engineer. Sort of comparison, everything's new for him, so he's had to take the time to learn it. And Jesus, hasn't he brought it all together now and shown Coulthard how it's done?
Yeah.
Well, he had a couple of silly mistakes early on too. Like there was, I think, speeding in the pits early days, and there was something else like spinning the wheels in a stop or something like that. They were just little silly things. Which is probably just a part of being in a new car. With the layout inside would be different. The feel of the car is different. The way the team perform is different. Even driving in and sitting there, like you see over the past, like in previous years, sometimes at Clipsal race, I can't remember who it was. Somebody drove into their old team's pit bay during the race to do a stop.
Yeah. Oh, look, that's not going to be the first time to happen. But I mean, at the end of the day, none of those sort of things detract from your on-track performance too much. And
no, his pace has been phenomenal, and he did the fastest lap of the weekend in the shootout.
Not even of the weekend. That's the fastest lap ever in a shootout lap. It was just unreal.
Yep. He's certainly got it all nailed, and Ludo and his connection is pretty good. He said recently that he feels that they've got their connection, and when they talk to each other, they sort of starting to relay exactly what one wants and the type of messages that Scotty needs and the feedback, how he gives that back as well. It's all sort of starting to come together, and it shows.
Yeah.
But then
it's absolutely showing in the results. Like as we were just saying, that at the start of the year, I think he had to adapt to a lot of new things, and you can understand that the guy wasn't winning every race from the first round. But geez, I tell you what, they're going right now, aren't they? Old Scotty Mack and the and his team there. So they've really brought it around, advanced a long way. And interestingly, talking about the tyres, how much do you think that that car is performing better on this year's tyre? Well, going back to the 2016 tyre at Pukekohe and Bathurst, do you think that's going to have any effect on the team?
I don't think so.
No, you think it's really car-driver combination that's got the results?
It'll be a part of it, but I think the team's moved on far enough that they probably would have been able to work out what they need to do to make that tyre fast now.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I think they'll probably pick up where they left off. They might not be as fast, but you don't need to be as fast at Bathurst. You just need to be reliable and consistent throughout the day and buy that ticket to the last stint.
That's it. And it looks like Red Bull has also sort of bridged that gap, I suppose. Obviously with Whincup being second in race 1 and first in race 2, and obviously Gears as well was third in race 2. So they've sharpened the pencil a little bit. They've bridged the gap, I think, up to DJR Team Penske. And
they're not consistent between the teammates at the moment as much, but then I guess Scotty's probably the exception, making everybody else look a little bit bad because he's been on fire everywhere. Where like Fabs, he was way back in the pack for these races. So
he had a horrible weekend.
He did, yeah, and it was easily his worst weekend for a long time as well. I mean, 21st in race 2. Not a great finishing, but it was only starting 12th as well.
A lot of stupid errors. Couldn't get qualifying laps together. Couldn't get the race together. Crappy start. Error. Got caught up in the mess at the start of the race for race 1, and then there was just the whole incident with Tim Slade and that in race 2. So there was a lot of errors on Coulthard's behalf. Whether it was the drivability of the car or something, I'm not sure. But he definitely didn't have a good weekend. And I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but something I saw over the weekend, and I'm not really 100% sure of the regulations. I feel like having a look, but I've always been under the influence that if you make an adjustment to the rear end of your car, whether it be suspension or something like that, during a pit stop, you have to put the incompressible stands underneath the car.
Yep.
Both times during Fabian Coulthard's pit stops on Sunday race, they didn't do that, and they adjusted the rear end of the car. So I'd be pretty interested to see what's happening there.
Yeah, well, I haven't heard anything about it, so
me either.
You'd like to presume that it would have been picked up. Yeah, if you're able to pick it up from home, you'd like to think the stewards at the track would be able to pick that up as well. Would have been investigated and subsequently fined. So, I don't know. We'll have to check the ruling on that. Maybe they have updated it, changed it for little tweaks. Yeah, it might now be major suspension work or.
I think the main thing though would be the fact that a lot of other teams were using the stands throughout the weekend. Namely, Michael Caruso, where they forgot to remove one.
Yeah,
they did. That was very, very clumsy.
Yeah, and to be totally honest, I'm quite surprised that it stood up, because to drop the car on the ground and have the wheels spinning, essentially there shouldn't be anything holding that stand in place. So I'm surprised it didn't just fall over and the car take off and then run over the stand and shoot it off at someone out the back of the car.
Yeah, well, both wheels were spinning. It was like it was on a jack, like from the center of the car.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting. Lucky to get away with those things. That, like you said, it didn't shoot out and hit anyone or cut a tyre or anything like that. Because if something like that happened, they would have got a penalty. Where this way,
I think they did get a drive-through, didn't they?
I'm not too sure actually.
But
I missed that a little bit. Yeah,
I think they did. But I think something else that sort of stood out for me was the hot and cold performance of Dave Reynolds.
Yeah, it can qualify. The man can pretty clearly put together a single. Well, I don't know if it's him. It could be the team as well, being able to set up a car very well for a hot lap. But yes, he obviously, race 1 qualified 8th, and he only dropped 1 position in the race. But race 2, he dropped 8 positions from the
changes
third
that they
place.
made to the car didn't relay through there. I think he is getting better. Like the team with that car is going very well. Yeah, and I don't think they're completely on top of that car yet. So I still think that they've probably got a little bit more to give.
Yep.
Not like Jason Bright,
no,
who didn't really have a lot to give over the weekend. He got into the shootout, and there was the hype over his 250th round or race or whatever it is, but round I think. And
he did manage to one-up Dave Reynolds, because of course I just said Reynolds dropped 8 positions. Bright did manage to drop 9 positions in race 2, so he did go one better.
Yeah, so for his seat next year, I'll be interested to see who ends up there, because I would be reasonably confident that he won't be in that seat next year. You think that would be sort of a bit of hot property?
As much as I don't think that it's going to happen, there's a lot of room and rumour to point towards the young Aston Martin driver, Richie Stanaway.
Yes.
Yeah. And that would be very interesting, because he could come in and be very much on the pace almost immediately.
Yeah, especially in something like that. He's made pretty good debut so far. Who's he teamed up with again this year? Is it Waters? It is, and aren't they going to be a handy little combination?
I reckon they will do quite well.
Yeah, because Waters he's going really well. Like, he's not getting involved in any incidents. Every now and again there's a little bit of something, but that's only sort of early race career type stuff. He's good, he's clean, he's normally pretty aware of all the drivers around him, so I think come Enduro time they're going to be a very handy combo.
Well, yeah, and I mean he finished 4th at Bathurst last year, and we saw how Stanaway drove in the Pither car. Yep. So it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, he What was I going to say there? He did come 5th in race 1, which wasn't too bad. Qualified 4th, so he only dropped 1 spot there, which wasn't too bad. But yeah, race 2, down in 14th, dropping 6 spots. But yeah, he has been having a pretty solid season. But speaking of which, someone we've been pretty harsh on all year, and we've got to address this, is Mark Winterbottom. We've pretty much slayed that guy all year, saying that he needs to pull his finger out, and I don't know what's happened. He's gone off the boil. And he backs it up with a podium and a 4th place. So actually a pretty good weekend for Frosty.
And do you know what I say to that? Let's talk about it after Queensland.
Yeah.
Because all 4 of the cars, I mean, shit, Brighty got into the top 10 shootout.
He did, yeah. Yep.
Granted, spun it on the last turn and destroyed turn 4 and all that sort of stuff and made an absolute mess of it. But all 4 of the cars got into the top 10 shootout. And in this field, that's pretty bloody impressive.
It is.
So if Winterbottom didn't make a good weekend of the fact that these cars were that much on it, then there really is problems. So it's to be expected, and he really wasn't that fast. I wouldn't have thought. Like, he sort of wasn't ever really fighting for the lead or anything. He was never able to go with the front guys.
No.
So the cars are definitely still behind the front lot, but I just don't think that that this weekend is very pivotal of the story when it comes to Winterbottom. We'll see how he goes the rest of the year.
Yeah,
I think a lot of it too is probably his confidence. I reckon that's been knocked around a fair bit when they're trying to get the feel with the car. It was it earlier this season? He was having the locking in the front,
brake issues, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was the line locker that was still keeping on slightly to one wheel. So when his foot hit the pedal, one wheel would slightly take up quicker than the other. So that was their issue there. They got that sorted, but then I think maybe they engineered a little bit around that issue before they sort of found out what it was. But you can tell he's a bit down in the dumps. He's made a couple of comments. So he made a comment there on an interview the other day, and he sort of started to lead down one way and then sort of laughed and said, I'll just stop there. I think that was about pace. Pretty much said, if we didn't have pace, there's no point in showing up. And I think he got halfway through saying that and thought, ooh, I don't want my sponsors to hear this.
No.
Yeah, I'm not going to James Courtney this conversation.
Yeah.
No.
Probably not the wisest thing to say, but look, nonetheless, if the confidence was going to be brought on by beating his teammate, he finished in front of Mostert in both races. I think you got to give him some credit. Like, obviously, as you say, the cars probably were performing better than where they're really at this round, and that's fair enough. But nonetheless, he beat his 2 teammates. We were just talking about how good a season Waters has been having. Chazzy Mostert's been in there fighting for the whole season. And
the thing is, I hold Winterbottom at that higher level because he has been in this game. He's got the experience. He should have the pace.
For sure, he should be beating him. Yeah.
He's the former championship winner, and he should be better than them.
Yeah.
But he's been getting towed by his second-year rookie for most of the year, and that's just not good enough.
No. And moving on to your 2 favourite drivers there. If Craig Lowndes and Garth Tander could figure out how to qualify, they'd be going quite well this season. Because once again,
Tander was doing a bit better this year at Townsville, though. He was doing better.
He did. He managed to qualify 9th for race 2 and 13th for race 1. Probably not amazing there, but he
and even Moff.
Yeah, and Moffat went very, very well, actually. Up 9 spots in race 2 was a huge effort by Moffat. It was good to see him with some pace, actually, lapping around behind Tander. But, geez, as I say, if those two, if Lowndes and Tander could manage to qualify well, geez, they'd still be up and around winning races or at least fighting for podiums. But every race, they've just got it all to do.
Yeah, like for race 2, you've got Tander in 6th. He gained 3 spots, so admittedly, the previous years with other teams, he's gone well here. And GRM were good at street circuits before with their other cars, so there's no reason they wouldn't be here. Moffat was in 7th. He went up 9 spots. Will Davison was behind in 8th. He also went up 9 spots. Yeah. James Courtney came up 4, so he had a top 10. That's a little bit rare to see as of recent.
Townsville, though.
Yeah, it's street track again. But then look at Craig Lowndes.
Craig Lowndes up 11.
Yeah, well, if you combine the 2 races together, he was up 24 positions from his qualifying results in the first and second race combined. I mean,
The problem with that, though, is that it's all very well when you're starting 21st off the grid or wherever you are back there. Those first 10 cars are pretty easy to pass.
Yeah.
It's the next 10 that are a problem. So yeah, you might get that extra tenth, that extra 2 tenths, and be in the top 10 for qualifying. Doesn't mean you're going to win podiums and stuff. Those next 10 drivers are quite good in good cars.
Look, that is true, but I think they've had
race pace is good though.
Yeah.
And same with like guys in front, like Davo's. They're very hit and miss. But you compare Lowndes and Tander. If they could both be mid top 10, they would almost be guaranteed a podium majority of the time because they do perform in the race really well.
Yeah, the race pace is good. I mean, I think to say to jump the first 10 people is easy. I don't think overtaking all that many people in supercars is easy in general. They're fairly narrow tracks half the time, and you got to work at it. It might take you, sure, it might not be that hard if your pace is outright much better, but it's still going to take you 10 laps to clear them or more to go around overtaking the couple of overtaking spots. So, the pace is good, the outright lap time is good, the race comes together very well. But the qualifying for Lowndes, at least 19th. I mean, he went up 13 spots in race 1 to come 6th. That's a great race he's put together. And then
there was also the early lap collision where there was about 4 people that got put out and all sorts of stuff. So there is things like that to take into consideration. There was, but at the end of the day, getting past a couple of those people at the back, the mobile chicanes, not so hard.
No, sure. When coming out of 21st, it's fair to say that the 4 or 5 people in front of him should have been pretty easy pickings for a man of his stature in the car that he's got the Triple Eight team. So I get you on that front, but I still think if they could figure out how to get a 1 lap, put together better.
Speaking of trying to work out what's happening, I'm sort of wondering about the purpose or the meaning of life behind LDM at the moment. I don't understand what it is that they're trying to do, whether they want to come and race money. Not sure if you're aware, but there is a significant amount of money behind the Dumbrell name. So the fact that they're turning up with these drivers that are throwing money at them and going race by race deals, to have Cam McConville pull out of his contract, granted, he had a valid reason, but then to sign Aaron Russell on for 3 races of the next, who's going to race the rest of them? It
is a very bizarre setup. I've never seen anyone rotate drivers and contracts the way this is doing. I'm with you. I don't know what they're playing at, but it's not a recipe for success.
I think that number 3 car has already had 6 drivers in it.
Yeah, as I say, it's not a recipe for success. It's how are you ever going to put together a good package and come anything other than 24th or 25th or the last of the runners?
Well, that's right.
Without consistency, it's not working for them, and I'm a bit with you. Why are they there?
The biggest thing for me is you look at the big excuses that a lot of people throw out. Like the biggest one with obviously Lowndes in the last couple of years, and same for Winterbottom. He's changed his engineer every year. Well, these guys are chasing drivers every race. Yeah. So, I don't understand. But to look at just their team just last year, look at how much they've changed. Barry Hay was obviously engineering the team. Great engineer, was able to get things done. But then you had Nick Percat and Heimgartner racing in the cars.
Yeah.
And, decent drivers with a good engineer, and they were sort of making things happen. Obviously, the win at the start of the year was circumstantial, but it was down to a good strategy and things worked. So I'm not going to take it away from them, but at the same time, it wasn't necessarily a proper win. But yeah, so to go through all that and then to come up this year, going almost race by race when it comes to contracts, it really baffles me as to what their plan is. And I'm almost at a thought where, Supercars needs to look at them and say, look, if you guys can't put together an outfit worth putting on the track, maybe we need to find someone who will.
Yeah, it's a very perplexing situation for the team, and you wonder how happy anyone there could possibly be when things are changing up like that. Imagine if every time you went to work you had different colleagues there. I mean, how well is everything going to gel together?
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
I can't imagine that over the weekend, finding out who was going to be the fight for last between Russell and Rouleau. I can't imagine that would have been that exciting for most people on the team.
No.
Yeah.
No, me either. It's pretty interesting. I don't really know what they're trying to do, but nonetheless, on that fairly somber note, we'll move on. We could probably
one complexity to another.
Yeah, that's it. But no, we'll move across and finish up with the World Superbike round, which was, of course, in America at Laguna Seca. Such a good track for motorbikes. Like, it's a good track for cars, but watching any bikes sort of come through the corkscrew always gets me all up and about. Watching the slow-mos is pretty phenomenal, and it is a track I'd love to go and actually ride myself. But in terms of the racing that went on there, you'll be very surprised to learn that, of course, it was a combination of Davies, Ray and Sykes on the podium for both races. They just swapped orders a little bit. Yeah, I know.
Get out.
Very surprising. And you'll never guess who came fourth in both of those races. Yeah, that's right, the other factory Ducati of Melandri. So, in fact, Forres got fifth in both of those races as well. So the similarities continue. But, look, unfortunately, we do tend to be talking about the same names each time of the races. And, in fact, certainly race 2 wasn't one of the more riveting of races. There was a nice, healthy 2-second gap back between a few of them. And look, the disparity between the factory Kawasaki and the factory Ducati and everybody else out there at the moment is just huge. It's massive. Obviously, the Ducati and the Kawasaki, it's pretty hard to pick the difference between the two. I'd suggest the Quackers tend to get the better start each time. But I think over the race distance, the Ducati does have the pace.
They've just got strengths in different parts of the track, and it just depends on... Well, I suppose if you pull Ray out of the equation, because you've probably got, like Davies has been crashing far too much.
Yeah.
And Ray, no matter what he does, seems to be in a podium position all the time. I think he's finished off podium once.
Yeah.
Or something this year. Something like that. And there's been a couple of races where things have gone wrong for him, but then people have fallen off at the front, and he's either won or he's got back on the podium. That guy at the moment on that bike can't do a thing wrong, as it shows with his 54-point championship lead. He can afford to miss 2 races.
Yeah, well, I think he's got a championship stitched up already.
He does.
Yeah, it's done. It's in the bank. Johnny Ray will win this championship unless he has a long-term injury. Unless he breaks a leg and has to miss half a dozen rounds, or 4 or 5 rounds. He will win this championship for sure. Yeah,
you've got the Yamaha, which... looks to be improving. Yeah, it looks to be improving, but not a lot. Not consistently improving. Like some races, it's a little bit better than others, than other times. As for the positioning throughout the field, Lowe's needs to stop crashing.
Yeah, he's not having a good run with the...
No, he's pushing too far beyond the bike's capabilities, or trying to ride it at peak tyre performance.
Yeah.
For the whole race, and as soon as it starts to go, unless that's just a part of whether it's his riding style or just the bike's feedback, that he can push that hard, but then gets no feedback throughout the tyre to the bike, if that makes sense, as for when it's going to let go. He seems to be having far too many like that. Aprilia, they're not really having the greatest. They're not standout.
Well, so I think the difference is with Aprilia is they're not a factory team. They haven't been factory for a little while. And going back to the disparity between the factory Kawasaki's, Ducatis, and everyone else, I said Xavi Forres, who's on a Ducati anyway, but it is not the factory team. But he came 5th in both of those races. The gap back from the leader was 21 seconds in race 1 and 22 seconds in race 2. I mean... That's 5th place. That's huge. And we're talking about races, short, 25-lap races. They're not long. This is not long-distance stuff. And he's really the start of everyone else. And even then, he was in 5th place in race 1. He was 10 seconds in front of 7th. So those front 4 bikes, and you can see it in race 2. We've had all this qualifying changes where obviously the order is shuffled around for race 2, depending on where they finished in race 1. Well, I think it was lap 2, and Johnny Ray and Sykes were at the front, first and second already. I mean, they just shoot straight through. It's not even an effort for them. At least the Ducati looks like it has to work a little bit to plough through the field. But again, you know, the Kawasaki's just disappeared. There's such a massive gap at the front that really you've got two divisions. You've got Ducati Kawasaki at the front, and then 20-odd seconds back, you've got the rest of the field, which is mainly made up of fast-flying sort of privateer entries. Your factory Yamahas, I wasn't impressed with them here. Obviously, as you say, Lowe's fell off in race 1. Vandermark only managed an 8th, so he was behind a couple of the non-factory outfits as well. And in race 2, they were 9th and 10th. So not great finishing position. And then the factory Honda, obviously, we can only really talk about one rider, and that's Stefan Bradl, because they don't have another full-time rider since Nicky Hayden hasn't been riding. So, yeah, but he was behind them in 12th. So the Aprilias, with no factory outlet, no factory team, no factory backing, the Aprilia is still going okay. I mean, Laverty's managed a 6th in race 2. That wasn't a bad result. Obviously, he didn't go so well in race 1, but yeah, nonetheless, I think, I don't know, it's just an interesting sport at the moment. You really have two divisions, and it's kind of, I don't know.
It's a little disheartening, really, because it was like in race 2, you've got the bit of the grid upset for starting positions. It was still the first lap. Ray had already got up to second, and he would have started.
That's it. Yeah.
Way back, like he comes second. So what would he start then? 8th or something like that?
9th would be. Is that
9th.
right? 9th,
Yeah.
Because first would be 10th, second 9th. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of the first lap, he was already up to second.
Yeah.
So it's
and wasn't
kind
Sykes
of
in front of
disappointing.
him? Wasn't Sykes in first? I think it might have been lap 1 that the two quackers were at the front. So, I mean, I'm convinced they put that ruling, that grid shuffle, I'm convinced they put that in place specifically to deal with the factory Kawasaki's and Ducatis because of how much advantage they've got.
It would be.
But it's not working. The only way you're going to do it is get them all to start from pit lane. I don't know how else you're going to stop them from winning races.
Yeah, unless you just do a reverse grid thing, but even then, there's too much of a gap. I think it's embarrassing, really, from where they were a few years ago, and the riding at the moment, well, not the riding, but the viewing of how it's all going isn't really that exciting at the moment, and it's not very good considering this is the peak of motorsport besides the prototypes in MotoGP.
Yeah.
So
well, this is certainly the second. This should be the second best tier, just not the prototypes. Obviously, they're based on street machines. So
yeah, and I don't know whether it's factory money that's dribbling as a whole. So whether more riders like Kawasaki, they don't have a MotoGP team. So whether they have more of a budget to pour into World Superbikes. And I suppose as they're going, why wouldn't you if you're going to dominate the sport? Where maybe some of the other teams like Yamaha, if they're paying, well, who knows what they're paying Rossi to be there. But then I suppose Ducati anyway, like they're going well here, and they've also got a big budget for Jorge Lorenzo. So I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's hopefully there is a bit of a turnaround at some point, or they decide to throw a little more weight on the Ducati and the Kawasaki just to bring them back into the field a little bit. I think
something's got to be done. I mean, it's horrible to sort of talk about superbikes. Obviously, we both love the superbikes. I've been watching them for a lot of years. And it's disappointing. It was a beautiful track, beautiful day at Laguna Seca. It's always good to watch racing there. But it's getting hard to watch in the same way that the Formula One was not long ago, and to a degree still is. It's getting hard to watch because the reality is you've got Johnny Ray out in front of the championship, who's already, as far as I'm concerned, he's already wrapped this championship up. He really just has to bum along, get some half-decent positions, and he's home safe. But you've got the same four people, really, unless one of them has a stack, Melandri or Davies or someone crashes. You've got the same four people coming in the top four every single race. And it is a bit of a problem that they're going to have to come up with some strategies to try and do it, because, as you say, it's certainly not at the sort of popularity of MotoGP. And I think that with the same results day in, day out, each time they race, I can't see it attracting more and more fans. I just can't at the moment in its current state. So obviously it's not nice to sort of talk about it in such a low light. But that's the
there was
reality
a few
of it.
years ago, we preferred this over the MotoGP at one point
Yeah, absolutely.
because it was certainly a lot more exciting, and it's certainly taken a turn the other way, which is a shame.
It is, and it's just something I'm not used to seeing in the Superbikes, which has always been so close with so many different riders for so long, and yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. Not even a Super Sport round, of course they never go to Laguna Seca, not even a Super Sport round to liven things up a little bit, so a little bit disappointing, but anyway, we won't focus on that. It has been a long podcast, so look, I might wrap it up there. But thank you to everyone who has joined us for this episode. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Make sure you do hit like on the video if you do enjoy it. Hit subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can check out all of our other podcasts over on our website at www.flagtoflag.ml. And of course, last but not least, thanks for joining me, Ryan and Willie.
Thank you.
Pleasure as always.
Well, we look forward to talking to you all next time. Bye for now.